In 1933, in the depths of the Great Depression, the United States was on a knife's edge. But one thing seemed certain: the strength of its democracy. But behind the scenes, a different future was being planned. A secret plot, backed by some of the wealthiest men on Wall Street, to march an army of 500,000 war veterans on Washington, D.C., throw the president out of the White House, and install a dictator. It sounds like a fantasy, but the testimony of one of America's most decorated generals revealed just how close it came to reality. This is the forgotten story of when Wall Street tried to stage a coup. To understand how this plot was even possible, you have to understand the America of 1933. The nation was in the iron grip of the Great Depression. A quarter of the workforce was unemployed, thousands of banks had failed, and the country was desperate for a savior. That savior appeared to be the newly elected president, Franklin Delano Roosevelt. He promised the American people a New Deal, a sweeping set of government programs, regulations, and public works projects designed to combat the economic collapse. But to a powerful group of America's wealthiest industrialists and Wall Street financiers, the New Deal wasn't a solution. It was a betrayal. They saw Franklin, himself from a wealthy family, as a traitor to his class. His policies, taking the country off the gold standard and creating social welfare programs, were in their eyes a terrifying step towards socialism. This was the vision of the plotters. To save American capitalism, they believed they had to remove the president. And as they looked for a new way forward, they began to take inspiration from the strong authoritarian regimes that were rising to power in Europe. The plan they devised was audacious and surprisingly simple. According to later testimony, a bond broker named Gerald McGuire, acting on behalf of the wealthy cabal, began to put the pieces in place. First, they needed an army. And a ready-made army of angry, disaffected men already existed. The 500,000-strong bonus army of World War I veterans. Just a year earlier, thousands of these men had marched on Washington to demand a promised war bonus, only to be violently driven out by the U.S. Army. The plotters believed these veterans could be easily persuaded to march again, this time for a different cause. But an army, even a large one, needed a leader. Not just a commander, but a respected national hero who could give their coup the illusion of legitimacy. A man on a white horse who could rally the people and the military to their side. The final plan was this: convince this popular general to lead the Veterans Army in a protest march on Washington. They would surround the White House, creating a national crisis that would force Roosevelt to resign, perhaps by feigning a sudden health emergency. The general would then be installed as a powerful new Secretary of General Affairs, who would effectively run the country as a dictator, with the Wall Street financiers pulling the strings from the shadows. The plotters had their army and their plan. All they needed was their general. And they believed they had the perfect candidate in mind: Major General Smedley Butler. He was, at the time, one of the most famous and respected military men in America. A decorated Marine who had served for over 3 decades, Butler was one of only 19 men in history to be awarded the Medal of Honor twice. He was immensely popular with the veterans of the Bonus Army, who saw him as a true leader. Crucially, he had also recently become a fierce public critic of American corporate power, giving speeches and writing that war is a racket run for the benefit of big business. The plotters saw him as a fellow traveler. They misinterpreted his anti-war stance as a sign that he would be sympathetic to their anti-Roosevelt authoritarian cause. And so, in the summer of 1933, their plan was put into motion. The organizers began to meet with General Butler, feeling him out for the leadership role. For the plotters, this was their golden moment. They had their plan, their army, and they were now recruiting the perfect hero to lead it. They believed their victory was inevitable. They had made just one catastrophic miscalculation. And here is where their meticulously crafted plan began to crumble. The plotters' fatal error was not in their ambition, but in their choice of leader. They saw Smedley Butler as a disillusioned strongman who would jump at the chance to seize power. They had completely failed to understand who he really was. Butler was no traitor. He was a fierce, if critical, patriot. Horrified by the treasonous proposal, he made a courageous decision. He would play along. For the next several months, Butler continued to meet with the conspirators, patiently gathering names, details, and the full scope of their plan. They thought they were recruiting a leader. In reality, they were confessing to a federal witness. By late 1934, Butler had heard enough. He took his incredible story to a journalist, and the shocking news of a fascist plot backed by Wall Street money began to leak to the public. To bring the full truth to light, General Smedley Butler agreed to testify under oath before a special committee of the United States Congress. The entire conspiracy was about to be dragged from the shadows into the public record. The plot was unraveling. In November 1934, General Smedley Butler sat before the Congressional Committee and laid out the entire conspiracy in explosive detail. He named names, he recounted the secret meetings, he detailed the plan for the Army of Veterans, the March on Washington, and the ultimate goal: to install a dictator backed by Wall Street money. The reaction from much of the mainstream press was immediate ridicule. The powerful men Butler accused used their immense influence to paint him as a delusional crank. The New York Times called his testimony a gigantic hoax. But after hearing from other witnesses in private, the Congressional Committee came to a stunning conclusion. In their final report, they officially confirmed the core of Butler's story, stating that they had received evidence that certain persons had made an attempt to establish a fascist organization in this country. The plot, they concluded, was very real. And then, nothing happened. No one was ever prosecuted, no arrests were made. The full version of the committee's report, which was believed to contain the names of the powerful men implicated, was censored by Congress and never released to the public. The plot didn't end with a bang. It was simply buried. The coup was unmade by a quiet, deliberate act of historical erasure. So why did this incredible plot, verified by Congress, vanish from American history? The official story was a lack of prosecutable evidence. The powerful men Butler accused simply denied everything, and it was his word against theirs. But the story leaves behind a chilling, unresolved question. Was American democracy saved by its institutions, or was it saved by the integrity of a single, incorruptible general? And what would have happened if the plotters had chosen a different man? The business plot is a story from a bygone era, but its central conflict is timeless. The struggle between democratic principles and the immense influence of concentrated wealth is a debate that continues to this day, in the halls of Congress and on the trading floors of Wall Street. His forgotten testimony is a powerful reminder that the institutions we rely on are only as strong as the people within them, and that the price of democracy is eternal vigilance. A warning from a past that was almost unmade.